The tomb was supposed to be quiet, a sealed chamber of stone, guarded by Rome, wrapped in finality. Yet sometime before sunrise, whispers began to curl through Jerusalem. Something had happened, something no one could make sense of. At first, the rumors were quiet, almost fragile, as if spoken too loudly they might shatter. But soon they became undeniable. The tomb was empty. What happened next, what the apostles did after the resurrection, remains one of the most dramatic, mysterious, and world-shaping chapters in human history. Their lives transformed from frightened fishermen to unyielding witnesses who carried a story across continents, sparked revolutions of faith, and ultimately met fates as dramatic as any in antiquity. But before their missions, before the codified Gospels, before cathedrals and councils, there was simply confusion and fear. The apostles didn't begin as heroes. On the night of Jesus' arrest, most of them ran. Peter denied even knowing him. Thomas disappeared altogether. The others hid behind locked doors while the city buzzed with the aftermath of a crucifixion. They were broken. The movement seemed over. And yet, in those days immediately following the resurrection, something happened to this scattered group that changed not only their own lives, but the trajectory of civilizations. It began with encounters, strange, sudden, deeply personal encounters that none of them could fully explain. Mary Magdalene running breathlessly from the garden, claiming she had seen him. Cleopas stumbling into the city with an unbelievable tale of a traveler on the Emmaus Road who broke bread and vanished. And then the stories multiplied. Peter, John, the 11, and later, Paul, who wasn't even a follower yet. The apostles weren't tasked with building a religion. They were tasked with carrying a story they believed could not be silenced. And so, with a mixture of courage and fear, clarity and confusion, they stepped into a world that was not waiting for them, and certainly was not ready for them. Peter was the first to break from the shadows. Once impulsive and unsteady, he became a voice that thundered across Jerusalem. Standing before crowds during the festival of Pentecost, he delivered a message that stunned the very city that had watched Jesus die. Thousands joined the movement in a single day, but with every new convert came danger. The same authorities who condemned Jesus now turned their scrutiny on his followers. Peter and John were dragged before councils, imprisoned, interrogated, threatened. Yet something about them had changed. The once frightened fishermen stood before rulers and declared they could not remain silent. John, the youngest apostle, became a steady presence beside Peter in those early days. If Peter was the fire, John was the ember, glowing with a quieter resolve. Some in the early Christian community even whispered that he had a special understanding, something shaped by standing at the foot of the cross, something shaped by being entrusted with Mary, the mother of Jesus. Over time, John became known as the last surviving apostle, outliving persecution, exile, and the crushing of Jerusalem itself. But not all the apostles remained in the city of their memories. One by one, they scattered across the ancient world, some willingly, some driven by persecution. Their journeys carried them along caravan routes, across deserts, into synagogues, marketplaces, palaces, and places where no Roman soldier had ever marched. Thomas, the apostle most famous for doubt, traveled farther than almost any of them. While his moment of skepticism became a defining story, it was not doubt that shaped the rest of his life, but rather relentless courage. Early traditions describe him journeying east through Syria, Persia, and even reaching the Malabar coast of India. There, he encountered communities who worshipped in temples filled with the scent of incense and the sound of drums, where he spoke of a teacher from Nazareth who had called fishermen and tax collectors to a new life. According to ancient accounts, Thomas won converts among merchants and noble families, and ultimately faced martyrdom after angering local authorities. Even centuries later, some Indian Christian traditions still call themselves Mar Thoma, the Church of Thomas. Meanwhile, Andrew, the brother of Peter, traveled northward, journeying along the coasts of the Black Sea. Early traditions place him in regions as varied as Scythia, Thrace, and Greece. One stark account describes his death in Patras, where he was bound, not nailed, to an X-shaped cross. The choice was deliberate, meant to prolong suffering. Yet witnesses would later claim that Andrew used the hours of his slow dying to continue speaking to the crowds who gathered. Whether embellished or factual, the story reveals how the apostles were remembered, not as silent victims but as unwavering proclaimers. Philip, often overshadowed in the gospel narratives, emerged as a sharp, articulate thinker in the decades that followed. He reportedly journeyed through Asia Minor, challenging philosophies in cities known for their learning. Some accounts describe him confronting magicians and Roman officials. In Hierapolis, he met his fate, killed, according to some early traditions, for converting the wife of a Roman proconsul. But the details are shrouded in layers of legend and ancient storytelling, leaving historians to sift through fragments. Bartholomew, called Nathaniel in some texts, became one of the most enigmatic figures among the 12. Early sources place him in Armenia, Arabia, and possibly even India, where some claim he left behind a Hebrew gospel. His death, often described with unsettling violence, became a symbol of the brutal opposition the apostles faced in lands far from home. James the Greater, son of Zebedee, met his end earlier than most. Unlike the apostles who scattered widely, James was executed in Jerusalem, ordered by King Herod Agrippa I. His death, recorded in early Christian writings, marked him as the first apostle to be martyred. But his story didn't end there. Centuries later, a tradition arose claiming his remains were taken to Spain, where the shrine at Santiago de Compostela became one of the most important pilgrimage sites in medieval Europe. How much of that tale is steeped in legend is a topic historians still debate, but its endurance speaks to James's lasting influence. Matthew, once a tax collector, transformed into a traveling teacher. Early accounts trace his steps to Ethiopia and regions of the Levant. His writings, particularly the gospel attributed to him, became a cornerstone of early Christian instruction, though historians continue to debate the exact nature of his authorship. Thaddeus, also known as Jude, is remembered in some traditions as a healer who brought hope to Syrian cities afflicted by disease. His fate, like many of the apostles, is tangled in competing accounts. Some place his death in Persia, others in Beirut. What is consistent is the portrayal of a man who traveled tirelessly, often entering communities that viewed foreigners with suspicion. Simon the Zealot, possibly once a revolutionary, repurposed his fierce convictions into unyielding missions across North Africa and Persia. Stories of him often involve confrontations with local cults or rulers. Whether symbolic or literal, these stories show how he was remembered, a man who refused to compromise. And then there was James the Less, often overshadowed by his namesake but remembered in early sources as a righteous man of deep devotion. Some accounts say he remained in Jerusalem as a stabilizing leader, guiding the early community as it grew and faced pressures from both religious authorities and Rome. His death, traditionally described as a stoning, became another in the line of martyrdoms that marked the apostles' legacy. Yet for all their journeys, dangers, and sacrifices, one figure stands apart: Paul. Though he was not one of the original 12, his impact became so enormous that understanding the apostles after the resurrection almost requires understanding his transformation. Once a persecutor, Paul experienced a vision on the road to Damascus that reversed the direction of his entire life. He traveled more extensively than any other early Christian leader, writing letters, building communities, and facing beatings, shipwrecks, imprisonments, and ultimately execution in Rome. But Paul's story intertwines with the apostles in unexpected ways. He met Peter in Jerusalem. He debated theology with James. He traveled with Luke, who would later record both his journeys and much of the apostles' early activities. Paul became a thread weaving together the stories of men who had walked with Jesus in life and men who believed in him after his death. As decades passed, the apostles' voices began fading from the living world and entering the realm of memory. Some died violently, some quietly, some in exile. John, according to tradition, lived long enough to witness the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 CE, the fall of the temple, and the scattering of the Jewish people. Some claim he wrote in exile on Patmos, crafting words that still ripple through history. Others say he returned to Ephesus, living out his last days surrounded by communities he had nurtured. What makes their stories extraordinary is not only where they went or how they died, but how ordinary they originally were. Fishermen, a tax collector, a zealot, a skeptic. Men who had no political power, no military strength, no wealth or status. And yet, within a generation, their message had spread from Jerusalem to Rome, from the shores of India to the sands of North Africa. Their accounts weren't preserved to elevate them, but to echo something larger, a claim that transformed their fear into boldness, their doubts into missions, and their failures into testimonies. The world they entered after the resurrection was full of competing gods, philosophies, and empires. Yet their insistence on one story, one teacher, one resurrection, one hope, shifted the spiritual landscape of the ancient world. The apostles became more than names etched in Scripture. They became wanderers of continents, challengers of empires, bearers of a story they believed was worth their lives. Their journeys stitched together a map of early Christianity that historians still trace today, uncovering fragments of ancient communities, inscriptions, ruins, and traditions that tie back to men who once hid behind locked doors, believing everything was lost. And perhaps that is the most astonishing part. Their story begins not with confidence, but with terror. Not with heroes, but with fugitives. And yet, something happened. Something they believed so strongly that it propelled them across oceans and deserts, into palaces and prisons, into histories written and unwritten. The apostles, after the resurrection, didn't simply continue a movement. They birthed something new, something enduring, something that would reshape the course of centuries. Their footsteps are gone, their voices silent, their writings incomplete, their fates often clouded by legend. Yet their impact remains, echoing through cultures and languages, rituals and architecture, stories and beliefs. Whether viewed through the lens of faith or history, devotion or skepticism, the lives of the apostles after the resurrection form one of the most compelling narratives of the ancient world, a narrative of transformation, courage, sacrifice, and an unquenchable conviction that something had happened in a quiet garden on a morning when the world thought all was finished. And for them, it was only the beginning.